So I have a couple of things that I actually want to talk about today. The first of which are the questions that Dib and Nila asked. Chloe, what are you doing? Stay where I can see you. So Dib asked, what technique slash trope slash structure do you most want to use in your writing and why? Have you been able to use it in any of your works in progresses? I actually ended up having to talk to my critique partners about this to see if they noticed any patterns, because I'm honestly horrible at picking out patterns in hindsight. The big thing mentioned was that I really like found family, which I agree with. Chloe, stop messing with stuff. No. Chloe, come on. I pretty much use found family in every work in progress I have. It's kind of a default for me. When I was planning the things that keep us here, I kind of knew immediately that I wanted Pim and Cecilia's parents to be kind of shitty. I actually have to actively choose to have parents that are good to their kids. I wonder why. Super Kids is pretty much entirely found family. The only blood that aren't awful are Roman's mom and Patton's dad. Otherwise, they're either abusive or they're absent. And Super Kids would definitely be a totally different story without found family, especially in the sequel, because their parents aren't really around as much. We also talked about redemption arcs and moral ambiguity. I don't get to use this as often, but I really do love it. I love reading and writing about sympathetic characters trying their best, but still mostly making the wrong choices before inevitably coming out of it, usually as a stronger person. That's pretty much the entirety of what Super Kids hangs on. Other than the whole basic, Virgil has shadow powers. That was my main idea for Super Kids, was I wanted him to have a downward arc and then a redemption arc. It's not completely what it's about, but without that concept, the story would definitely fall apart, I think. I think it's obvious. I like writing queer characters, I like writing trans characters. I prefer mask-leaning protagonists, probably because I'm mask-leaning, but it was a surprise to me in the things that keep us here. I knew kind of immediately that I wanted to write a female protagonist, a cis girl. That's not like me. Lately I've been writing about death a lot, which is extremely unusual for me because it's usually such a bad trigger that it's just completely off the table. But I lost someone recently, and I guess this is how I've been dealing with it. I've been writing a lot of short stories about grief, about what people do after someone is gone. Chloe! I also prefer writing stories that have less fluff. If you're familiar with the fanfiction terms, my favorite genre is hurt comfort, which basically means that something fucked up happens and they have to deal with that, but it has a happy ending and a good amount of comic relief. Not comic relief like random jokes, but good things happen, they get breaks, etc. Moving on, Nila asked, how do you characterize your characters? And I usually just take a concept and bounce off of that. I can't really talk about Super Kids because it started out as a fan fiction, so I started out with fully realized characters that I just kind of adjusted. But with Plant Life, for example, Frederick happened because I wanted to write about a circus boy. Then I decided I wanted him to be kind of a himbo. And then I listened to the song New Slang by the Shins, and things kind of started falling into place after that. For Bezzy's little sister Rosemarie, I knew I wanted a really emo girl who was really sweet and bubbly. For Bezzy themselves, I knew I wanted them to be fairly reserved, headstrong, maybe a little too quiet about their feelings. I wanted Conan to be creepy, I wanted Dodie to be super sweet. Sometimes it's also a question of what don't I have yet. In the things that keep us here, it's focused on their small, tight-knit group of friends, so I kind of assign them traits all at once so they balance each other out. They wouldn't be friends without Avery as a mediator, because Arata and Cecilia are both just too explosive and sensitive. Mostly explosive on Arata's part and more sensitive on Cecilia's, but they both have a healthy amount of both. I knew from the beginning that Pym had to be impulsive and chaotic and pretty much a foil to Cecilia, because a lot of the confusion and stress the characters have throughout the book wouldn't work if he was a super cautious character. That would also lessen the possibilities of what actually happened to them, which again would lessen the tension. Moving on, I do want to talk about NaNoWriMo for a second. If you don't know, July is Camp Nano, which is NaNoWriMo, except you get to choose your own word count goal instead of the 50K. My original word count goal was 30,000 words, but I have to be honest, I haven't written anything. I think I've written a couple hundred words since I've written the script, actually. Technically, I've written some poetry, but I was going to work on the things that keep us here for Nano, and I've only written those couple hundred words. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do Camp Nano because of how things have been at work and home right now. I don't really have a lot of free time. I'll still try to do writing updates, but they probably won't be centered around word count. I mentioned I've written some poetry, and that's pretty much the only thing I've been writing lately. I started watching Rachel Oates' videos on poetry, and it really opened my eyes to a lot of things I've been ignoring about the art form. I don't know if I've mentioned this in videos before, but before I actually started writing it, I didn't like poetry. I didn't understand it. And I still kind of don't understand it. Dib did mention that he's been, in his words, beating me over the head with some of the stuff that I've realized, and he's right, he has been. But I really did have to hear some of this stuff out loud with examples for it to get in my head. I recently rewrote a poem that I wrote a few months ago. It was one of my first ones, actually. And I want to read both versions just to show the difference. I don't want to call them the first and second drafts because the first version actually had like 5 drafts, but this last version is so different. It's more than just a new draft. So I'm going to read the second version first so you can have a second to interpret it for yourself and sit with it. And then I'm going to read the first version so you can see what it used to be, and then I'm probably going to read the second version again. Chloe, come away from there. Come here. Before I start though, Dib had asked me what my main takeaways have been about major changes I can make to my poetry, and I want to go over those as well. So first of all, and this is probably obvious, but there's more to a poem than just rhyming. And it was obvious, I just didn't really know what to do with that, so like I said, I ignored it. Rhythm is really important, something Dib's been telling me for a long time, and something I still honestly don't really understand, but I am going to try to work on that. Second thing I've learned is that poetry should tell you a story, which is why imagery is so important. It's not just a rant or you saying things, it's a story or a speech sometimes. And lastly, and I think this is the most important one, there should be layers and nothing should be stated explicitly. Obviously there are exceptions, but in general you should be able to think about it and sit with what you read. So before I start reading, this is the first draft of a new version, and there are some parts of it that aren't good yet, but I'm pretty proud of the changes. It's currently untitled. I've never read it out loud before, so hopefully it's okay. When I was little, I visited the carnival, an empty sand lot with broken parts. Dust and sand filling our shoes, my friends and I crawled into the empty carts. The sun rose over the blinding desert, beige and white rolling hills, a clear canvas, a black hole, where even the reptiles still. I leaned back in my seat and closed my eyes, enjoying how the cart rocked and swayed. It wasn't until I opened my eyes that I realized how long I'd stayed. I looked around, still half in my reverie, to find out my friends had left me. One by one, they'd disappeared, leaving their broken carts empty. A carousel had risen around me, painted horses with sneering eyes. Instead of reins, there were chains, snaking around my wrists and locking me inside. I went to get off, I said, and join my friends. He clopped forward without a word, round and round, without an end. As I swooped and dipped in circles, I passed my ex-housemates, dining on cotton candy and kettle corn. Roller coasters and haunted houses they await. They're moving on, they've got their shit in a bag, while I stay trapped in the carousel, on my flesh my chain snag. My friends stop and say, come with us, let's leave, but I am not allowed to be so bold, my presence they'll have to grieve. My begging turns to crying, my friends begin to scream, come with us, how am I able to leave? All along, the carousel moves on, and I'm stuck with the same beat in the same seat, with nothing to drink and nothing to eat. Leave without me, leave without me, leave without me or kill the horse. Leave without me, knock me off my course. I'm still here, going round, and the chains have rubbed my wrists raw. I shift in place and kick at the sides, and at my skin I claw. My friends are still lingering, but they're starting to wander. The stars are the only light. My friends are still here, but I'm starting to wonder what the final trigger will be. So as you can see, the rhythm and structure kind of got away from me there at the end, and I don't really like the last line, but I'm overall pretty proud of it. I like the story. I think it says what it needs to, clear enough without being too explicit, and I'm of course open to criticism. And this will probably be a little embarrassing, but here's the original title, Trying My Best. Everyone's getting better, making progress. I'm sorry I'm still a mess. I promise I'm trying my best. It's so confusing, nothing makes sense. I can't get off my defense. I really don't mean to disappoint, I just can't find a checkpoint. Though I know you know the healthy thing to do, my flaw is just thinking of you. This carousel's so hard to move. Thought it best to follow the leader, my flaw's on a repeater. My trauma will send you to your grave, my instinct is to behave. You're all ahead of me, so close to success. All I can do is regress, I promise I'm trying my best. It's like I'm falling in the ocean, I'm always trapped with my emotions. I can't understand in the moment, my common sense gets frozen. Everyone's getting better, I'm left behind, losing my shit, going blind, I'm always wanting to rewind. I'm sorry that I always depress, aggress, I know you're not like the rest, I promise I'm trying my best. So obviously that's not great, it's just a rant with some rhymes. And I did my best to keep a meter, but I honestly don't know what that means, so it's just repeated syllables. I like what I'm saying, and I think it was important to me at the time, and it helped to get it out, but I wouldn't really call it art. Like I said, it's just a rant with some rhymes in it. I'm gonna go ahead and replay the footage of me reading the new version so you can really hear the changes. When I was little, I visited the carnival, an empty sand lot with broken parts. Dust and sand filling our shoes, my friends and I crawled into the empty carts. The sun rose over the blinding desert, beige and white rolling hills, a clear canvas, a black hole, where even the reptiles still. I leaned back in my seat and closed my eyes, enjoying how the cart rocked and swayed. It wasn't until I opened my eyes that I realized how long I'd stayed. I looked around, still half in my reverie, to find out my friends had left me. One by one, they'd disappeared, leaving their broken carts empty. A carousel had risen around me, painted horses with sneering eyes. Instead of reins, there were chains, snaking around my wrists and locking me inside. I went to get off, I said, and join my friends. He clopped forward without a word, round and round, without an end. As I swooped and dipped in circles, I passed my ex-housemates, dining on cotton candy and kettle corn. Roller coasters and haunted houses they await. They're moving on, they've got their shit in a bag, while I stay trapped in the carousel, on my flesh my chains snag. My friends stop and say, come with us, let's leave, but I am not allowed to be so bold, my presence they'll have to grieve. My begging turns to crying, my friends begin to scream, come with us, how am I able to leave? All along, the carousel moves on, and I'm stuck with the same beat in the same seat, with nothing to drink and nothing to eat. Leave without me or kill the horse. Leave without me, knock me off my course. I'm still here, going round, and the chains have rubbed my wrists raw. I shift in place and kick at the sides, and at my skin I claw. My friends are still lingering, but they're starting to wander. The stars are the only light. My friends are still here, but I'm starting to wonder what the final trigger will be. So it still needs some work, but I'm still pretty proud of it. And before I end the video, I need to ask Dib and Nila my question, which is, what are your current writing goals, both immediate and long term? Okay, see you next time. Stay proud.